Imagine an anti-Santa Claus who doesn't give a crap about spreading cheer. Instead, he creeps through the night, hunting down naughty kids and making them wish they'd never been born. Meet Hans Trapp, the Christmas cannibal Scarecrow. A twisted figure from French folklore who's less about presents and more about punishment. For centuries, his legend has terrified villages with stories of cannibalism, devilish pacts, and divine revenge. This isn't some lovable, fluffy fairy tale. It's the kind of nightmare that fucks with your head. So, who the hell was Hans Trapp? A cautionary fable to scare kids straight, or a real-life monster? Let's dig in and find out. Hans Trapp isn't your average Christmas story. Hell no. There's no Santa, no flying reindeer, and definitely no holiday cheer. Instead, we've got a nightmare wrapped in folklore. Dark magic, curses, and, oh yeah, cannibalism. This isn't the kind of story you tell the kids to make them excited for Christmas. It's the kind that makes them sit their ass down, shut the hell up, and get their shit together. The legend of Hans Trapp comes from the Alsace and Lorraine regions of northeast France, where he's been scaring the hell out of kids for centuries. He's not handing out coal to the naughty ones. He's hunting them. Hans Trapp is the ultimate warning. Mess around and you might just meet a man far worse than any boogeyman. But here's the creepy part. This story didn't come from nowhere. There really was a man whose life went so far off the rails that his name turned into a chilling legend. Over time, the truth twisted into something even darker, and the Christmas cannibal was born. So, what's the deal with Hans Trapp? Where did this nightmare begin, and how did one man's story turn into a shit show of pure terror? Let's dive into the legend, the horror, and everything that makes Hans Trapp the last one you'd ever want creeping around your house on Christmas Eve. Hans Trapp was a very intimidating fella. He was 6 foot 6 inches tall and at least 300 pounds. He had thick, wild-looking, long, dark hair that covered his face. He also had a long-ass beard like ZZ Top. Some folks claimed it was fake. He had beady eyes tucked under his bushy eyebrows. He always looked like he was pissed off. The legend of Hans Trapp starts in the 1400s with a man who had it all: wealth, power, influence, and yet it still wasn't enough for his greedy ass. See, Hans Trapp wasn't content with the mountains of riches he already had. He wanted to be feared. He wanted more power, more gold, more everything. And according to the legend, he was willing to do whatever the fuck it took to get it, even if it meant diving head first into the darkest shit imaginable. Hans started dabbling in the dark arts, witchcraft, rituals, curses, the whole nine. He felt he was getting closer to the power he desperately craved. As he continued with sacrifices and rituals, his mind deteriorated into the abyss. Then, one day, Hans Trapp went completely overboard and struck a deal with the devil himself. Yeah, that's right. Full-on, sign your soul away kind of shit. The pact was simple. He would give up his eternal soul, and the devil would make him richer and more powerful than ever. It blows me away how far someone will go when greed eats their ass alive. But here's the thing about making deals with the devil. There's always a catch. People started to notice that Hans wasn't just another ruthless nobleman. Strange things started happening around him. Shit that couldn't be explained. Crops on his land withered and died overnight, while nearby fields thrived. Animals disappeared without a trace, only for their mangled, bloodless bodies to be found days later in the woods. Locals whispered about hearing low, guttural chants drifting on the wind from Hans' estate at night. The kind of sounds that make your skin crawl. Some claim to have seen shadowy figures lurking near his castle. Figures that moved in ways no human should. Others swore Hans himself had changed. His skin grew pale, his eyes hollow, like something was slowly eating him alive from the inside. It didn't take long for the rumors to spread like wildfire, and the Catholic Church sure as hell wasn't going to let it slide. See, this was the 15th century, when fear of heresy and witchcraft was at an all-time high. The church had eyes and ears everywhere, and it didn't take much to put Hans in their crosshairs. They launched an investigation into his life, and what they uncovered was enough to brand him as a full-blown heretic. Stories of those eerie rituals, whispered sacrifices, and his unholy hunger for power painted Hans as a man completely consumed by darkness. The church wasted no time. They declared Hans Trapp a servant of the devil, a blight on humanity. He was excommunicated, thrown out of the church, a sentence that might as well have been a death sentence back then. They seized his lands, his money, and his titles, stripping him of everything that made him powerful. With nowhere to turn and no allies left, Hans Trapp was exiled to the German wilderness, banished and humiliated. Picture it, a man who once lived in luxury, now wandering the dark, cold forests like a wild animal. And let me tell you, the legend doesn't paint him as a man who handled his downfall well. They say the isolation broke him. He completely lost his shit, consumed by rage, desperation, and whatever unholiness still lingered from his deal. Out in those woods, Hans Trapp became something else. A man stripped of humanity, driven by madness, and warped into a monster by his own greed. That's where the legend gets even darker, because losing his sanity was only the beginning of the nightmare. Cut off from his riches, his power, and anything resembling human contact, Hans became something else entirely. According to the lore, he started dressing himself as a scarecrow. Yeah, you heard that right, a fucking scarecrow. He was completely out of his damn mind at that point. So, dressed up like some fucked up Jeepers Creepers come to life, Hans began lurking in the shadows, preying on anyone unlucky enough to cross his path. Travelers moving through the forest started disappearing, their fates whispered about in terrified tones by the locals. The story goes that Hans Trapp would stalk these travelers, lying in wait like some monster in the dark, and then strike. Whether it was out of desperation, hunger, or just pure evil, he killed without mercy. And if that's not disturbing enough, the legend says he didn't stop at killing. Nope. Hans had a hunger for something far more sinister. He started to crave something else apart from power and wealth. Hans Trapp had begun to crave flesh, human flesh, and in particular, a child's flesh. He wanted this more than anything. The urge was overpowering. One day, he decided he was going to take a child. Hans Trapp disguised himself as a scarecrow by stuffing the sleeves of his dirty jacket with thick straw, a burlap sack on his face, and a dirty, torn hat. He stood as still as a statue in the middle of a field, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. He didn't have to wait long. A small boy, aged 10, eventually approached, totally unaware. The young boy walked up towards the scarecrow. He thought for a second that he saw the scarecrow move. So he stopped and stood up at the straw-filled terror. Then, without warning, the scarecrow pounced on the child and stabbed him to death with a sharp stick. He then flung the boy's body over his shoulder and headed back towards his cabin in the forest. When Hans Trapp arrived back at his cabin, he then dismembered and roasted the boy's remains. The overpowering urge to taste the boy's flesh became too much. He cut off a slice and brought the crispy seasoned meat towards his lips. This wasn't just some guy losing his mind in the woods. This was full-blown, next-level evil. It was at this moment that a bolt of lightning hit Hans Trapp in the head, killing him instantly. But here's the thing. Hans Trapp's death didn't stop the legend. If anything, it made it stronger. People said the lightning bolt didn't just kill him, it wiped him out so completely that there was nothing left but ash. No grave, no body, just the horrifying story of the Christmas scarecrow who preyed on travelers and ate children. Divine punishment, they called it. A cosmic reckoning for his horrific deeds. Some say it was God putting an end to his evil once and for all. Others think it was just sheer coincidence, but good riddance. Either way, the man who had turned into a monster was finally stopped in the most dramatic and shocking way possible. Hans Trapp's story isn't just a random cautionary tale about a crazy man in the woods. It's tied directly to Christmas, and that's where the legend takes an even darker turn. See, in the Alsace and Lorraine regions of France, Hans Trapp isn't just remembered as some wandering monster. Nope, he became something much worse. A twisted, sinister figure who emerged during the Christmas season to scare the living shit out of kids. And like all great legends, this one stuck. The tale of Hans Trapp spread far and wide, a chilling reminder of what happens when greed, pride, and power consume you. It's not just a story about a man who lost everything. It's a story about a man who became everything you fear. Even now, centuries later, his name still lingers in the dark corners of European folklore, whispered around campfires and used to scare kids straight. As the legend goes, Hans Trapp didn't stop after death. Yeah, the lightning bolt may have struck him down, but his dark, cursed soul lived on. According to the legend, Hans Trapp became a shadowy figure who stalked villages during the holidays, hunting for misbehaving children. While St. Nicholas handed out gifts and joy to the good little boys and girls, Hans Trapp was there to balance the scales. He wasn't bringing gifts or holiday cheer. He was dishing out fear and punishment. Parents would warn their kids, "You better behave or Hans Trapp will come for you." And this wasn't just some empty threat like, "You'll get coal in your stocking." No, the legend of Hans Trapp was designed to terrify. The Christmas Scarecrow would snatch up naughty children, drag them into the woods, and kill them and eat them. Yeah, that kind of punishment. In some stories, Hans Trapp worked alongside St. Nicholas, acting as an ultimate enforcer. St. Nick rewarded the good kids, while Hans Trapp took care of the brats, like permanently. Can you imagine being a kid back then, hearing these stories around Christmas? Forget sugar plums and candy canes. These kids were lying awake at night, terrified of a straw-stuffed scarecrow lurking outside their window, ready to snatch them away if they dared step out of line. Man, they had to be totally bricking it. This connection to Christmas is what makes the Hans Trapp legend so unique and so damn creepy. While most holiday legends focus on joy and togetherness, Hans Trapp is a grim reminder that not everyone deserves a Merry Christmas. For the people of Alsace and Lorraine, his story served as both a terrifying warning and a moral lesson. Behave, or the Christmas Scarecrow will come for you. So, while the rest of the world celebrates with Santa Claus and reindeer, Northeast France and Northwest Germany have Hans Trapp, a dark figure who turned Christmas into a time of fear for anyone foolish enough to screw up. And honestly, isn't that way scarier than getting a lump of coal? Because, let's be honest, there's something about Hans Trapp's story that hits different. It's not just the gruesome details or the fucked up imagery of a man dressed like a scarecrow eating human flesh. It's the idea that someone could fall so far, that greed and power could twist a person into something monstrous like that. Hans Trapp wasn't born a monster, he became one. And that, my friends, is what makes his story so terrifying. The terrifying legend of Hans Trapp, the cannibal scarecrow who snatched misbehaving kids and made Christmas a waking nightmare, might not have come out of thin air. As it turns out, this twisted tale could be based on a real guy. His name was Hans von Trotta. Now, von Trotta didn't dress like a scarecrow or roast children over a fire. At least, there's no evidence of that. But he was a ruthless bastard who pissed off all the wrong people, namely the Catholic Church. He was the fourth son of the Archbishop of Magdeburg's Marshal, Thilo von Trotta. Hans' birthday is estimated to be in the mid-15th century in what today is the German state of Saxony-Anhalt, just across the border from where the legend of Hans Trapp took root. This guy wasn't just some no-name figure either. He was a powerful knight with massive land holdings, a military background, and a reputation for being stubborn as hell. In the late 1470s, Hans would enter the service of the electors and Counts Palatine of the Rhine in Heidelberg, a role that he was most likely given due to the family's connection with the Archbishop John of Magdeburg. But Hans did prove himself in that role, and by 1480, He was given 2 castles in the Franco-German hill range of Wasgau, Bervestein and Grafendon. Hans would immediately start work on one castle, Bervestein. He erected an outpost that would be given the name of Little France, which enabled a piece of open ground known as the Corpse Field to be covered by a crossfire from the directions of either the northern castle or the southern Little France. As this field was the only place where cannons could be deployed against the castle, this effectively meant that Hans had made the castle impregnable, only 4 years after he had been given the castle. This is a fact that would be proven many times over the following years, with the castle never being conquered, at least not by humans. In 1591, the castle burnt down as a result of a lightning strike. Sound familiar? But his story isn't one of heroism or chivalry. Nah, von Trotha is remembered for being a relentless, feud-loving asshole who went toe-to-toe with the church and, in classic power-hungry fashion, took things way too far. Here's how it all went down. Von Trotha got into a long, ugly feud with Henry, who was the abbot of the Order of Benedictine monks at Weisenberg Abbey. Why the dispute happened was the castle and everything in it originally belonged to the monastery. The way the abbot saw it, von Trotha acquired the castle illegitimately because it was supposed to be put under the protection of the elector. But the elector said fuck it and gave the castle to Hans in 1480. At first, the elector made up bullshit excuses. After a while, the excuses became unconvincing, and the elector raised von Trotha's rank to marshal and sold him the belongings. Hans was now the sole owner of the castle. This really pissed off the abbot, which led to the shit show. Hans von Trotha was a man who took petty to a whole new fucking level. His feud with the abbot of a nearby monastery hit its peak when he decided to build a dam near the village of Bobenthal. This dam cut off the water supply to a downstream town, creating a small reservoir that flooded the surrounding meadows. The abbot filed complaints, but Hans didn't give a shit. Instead, he destroyed the dam, causing a massive flood that devastated the town. This wasn't just a feud anymore. This was full-blown war. Desperate, the abbot turned to Pope Innocent VIII for help. But the Pope basically ghosted him, dying shortly after. His successor, Pope Alexander VI, the infamous Rodrigo Borgia, eventually summoned Hans to Rome in 1499 to explain himself. Hans, being the cocky bastard he was, didn't even bother to show up. Instead, he sent a letter accusing the Pope of immortality. Bold move considering Alexander VI's shady reputation. The Pope didn't take it well and excommunicated Hans, officially labeling him as an enemy of the church. To make things worse, the Roman-German king, soon-to-be emperor Maximilian I, issued an imperial ban against Hans in 1496. Even Hans' longtime ally, the Elector Palatine, publicly cut ties with him, though he secretly sent Hans to the French royal court. There, Hans charmed his way into knighthood under King Louis XII. While von Trotha was undoubtedly a vengeful, power-hungry bastard, there's absolutely no evidence he practiced witchcraft, made deals with the devil, or, ate children. Those fucked up gruesome details? That's where the church comes in. See, back in the day, The church was really good at villainizing their enemies. It wasn't enough to call someone a greedy prick. They had to turn them into a damn monster. Whisper campaigns, exaggerated rumors, and dark stories were powerful tools to ruin someone's reputation, and Von Trotha was a prime target. Over time, the tale of this knight who defied the church started blending with local folklore. In regions like Alsace and Lorraine, where creepy legends were already thriving, people began to twist the details. Maybe it was Von Trotha's ruthlessness, or maybe it was his feud with religious authorities. But somehow his story morphed into something darker. A real-life villain became the stuff of nightmares. A man so evil that he struck a deal with the devil, dressed himself like a scarecrow, and terrorized children. It's like a centuries-old game of telephone where the story just keeps getting creepier. By the time the legend of Hans Trapp really solidified, Von Trotha's historical roots were buried under layers of myth and terror. The excommunicated knight became the Christmas Scarecrow, a monster lurking in the shadows to punish the wicked and devour the innocent. It's not hard to see how a powerful, church-defying figure like Von Trotha could evolve into such a creepy-ass story. People loved their cautionary tales, and Von Trotha's fall from grace fit the bill perfectly. So, was Hans Trapp real? Loosely speaking, yes. If you strip away the horror, the dark magic, and the cannibalism, you're left with Hans Von Trotha, a ruthless knight who pissed off the wrong people, paid the price, and became a cautionary tale that would outlive him for centuries. And while he may not have been a scarecrow-wearing cannibal, his legacy proves one thing. If you fuck around enough, people will make damn sure you find out, even if it takes turning you into a monster to do it. Hans eventually died of natural causes in 1503. His charges cleared posthumously, but his dark reputation lived on, morphing into the creepy-ass legend of Hans Trapp. Whether Hans Trapp was a real person, a twisted legend, or a mix of both, his story has been around for a long-ass time. And trust me, it hasn't gotten any less creepy. In fact, it's only grown darker. Today, Hans Trapp's tale lives on as one of the most chilling parts of European Christmas folklore. Forget about jolly old Saint Nick. Trapp's the one parents warn their kids about when they start acting like little shits. His story isn't just some spooky bedtime tale. It's a moral lesson. It's a reminder that greed, cruelty, and pride will fuck you over in the end. You want to be an asshole? Get ready for the damn consequences. Hans Trapp was the kind of man who thought he could escape punishment, but the universe, or whatever you want to call it, had other plans for him. In Alsace and Lorraine, his story is still a huge part of Christmas traditions. It's not about the presents or the cheer. It's about teaching kids that bad behavior doesn't go unpunished. So while the rest of the world is dreaming of Santa Claus, remember this: Hans Trapp is the anti-Santa. He's the one lurking in the shadows, ready to drag you into the night if you start fucking up. Merry Christmas! If you've vibed with this video, tap that like button and subscribe. That way you won't miss out on more of my fucked up commentary. And besides, I really do appreciate it. Hans Trapp sounds like a grade A asshole. What do y'all think? Let me know in the comments. And last but definitely not least, click on that join button just below the title and become part of my YouTube membership. For as little as $2.99, you can help me more than you know. I hope everyone has a Merry Christmas and a kick-fucking-ass New Year. Y'all keep it real, keep it chill, and stay creepy! Catch you on the flip. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end. You are the real beast.